American businessman, WEF board member Mark Carney, has completed the coup of the Canadian government and has been sworn in as the 24th Prime Minister. His first act was a bunch of theater, as typical with the far left and the Liberal government. A lot of talk, no action. Welcome to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. I'm your host. The Canadian coup was completed today with Mark Carney being sworn in, Justin Trudeau making a bunch of drama and crying like a true world leader and a man that you want to follow to war. Mark Carney's first decisions are to go to France and England and not worry about the trade war that's happening with China, not worried about the trade war that's happening with America, not worried about the internalized trade of Canada, not worried about any of it. He's just off to Europe. Now, his actual first action was a whole host of theater, which I think is important for Canadians to realize that it's just more of the same. He says, oh, more money in your pocket, which I heard Freeland say a million times, I heard Trudeau say a million times. And he is desperate to take the platform away from the Conservatives because everybody knows that the Conservative Party has the agreement and the support of the Canadian population. He goes through this little bit of theater. I'll let you have a look at it right now.
We will be eliminating the Canada fuel charge, the consumer fuel charge, immediately, and we will be ensuring that those Canadians who have received rebates will continue to receive a rebate in the next quarter. The next payment is before the end of April. This will make a difference to hard-pressed Canadians, but it is part of a much bigger set of measures that this government is taking to ensure that we fight against climate change, that our companies are competitive, and the country moves forward. So it's my honor, on behalf of my colleagues, to sign this.
Bravo. Everybody hit their mark. Nobody missed a line. The lighting was perfect. I want you to see it as theater because that's exactly what it is. This is a man who's desperate to try to compete with the image of Donald Trump. Knowing full well that he can't compete with him toe-to-toe, he's trying to steal all of his great shots, right? And he's seen Donald Trump sign a lot of executive orders, and he wants you to believe that that's what he's doing as well. And I'll show you what's written on that paper. There's nothing much in it except for a text message. However, we bring the cameras into a room we never get access to. And he goes ahead and tells the cabinet what he'd already agreed they would say. He probably had a speechwriter say it, right? Write it out for him. And then he practiced his lines in front of a mirror because that's what we saw here. And then once he's done the signature, he looks up. Does he look at the people around him? No, he looks right at the camera that he positioned there so that he could get that shot, so that he knows that on his X platform or whatever he uses, Blue Sky, I don't know, he has this image of him signing this executive order with a Sharpie, just like he's, Donald Trump. And he's already started this, but I'll cover that in a different video. This one, I just wanted to show you how he looks right up and he looks directly at the camera like he's, waiting to see if they get a shot. I mean, if you're in theater, you ignore the camera, but that's the thing that you need to do. Anyway, that's a different video. Now I want to show you what was written on that paper because there was nothing on it. Absolutely nothing on it. So here you can see the screenshot and it's, the seal, and then it's eliminating the consumer carbon price like it's some kind of a name of an executive order. March 14, 2025. I hereby instruct that the fuel charge be removed as of April 1st, 2025, and that the April 2025 Canada carbon rebate be issued. Prime Minister Mark Carney, and then he signed it. That said nothing. That doesn't say that I'm rescinding all of the law, that massive piece of legislation that they have putting the carbon tax on all of our manufacturing and all of our lives. That just says I'm going to roll it back to zero as of April 1st. And then he says, and don't worry, I'm going to send out the checks in April, just like I was going to anyway. Well, that's not, you're not doing us a favor, bud. You've collected those taxes, right? The whole argument, your whole premise was, oh, we're collecting these taxes, but we're giving it back to you and we're going to put more money in your pocket. Now you want me to believe that you're doing me a favor? Now you want me to believe that you're taking the carbon tax off of the gasoline, the consumer part, but I don't know that it's coming off the fuel that's going on to businesses. Is the tractor trailer that's driving the food to the store, is that also getting taken off? Or is it just rolling back on the consumer part? Right? Not on the industrial side, just on the consumer side. So really I'm just going to save money from what I'm putting in my car, but I'm not going to be saving any money at the grocery store. I'm not going to be saving any money at the hardware store. I'm not going to be saving any money anywhere else. And now you want me to think that you're doing me a favor by saying you're going to be issuing these checks, but the carbon tax isn't being removed. It's only being scaled back to the zero. That's what they've done. Instead of taking it away, they've just rolled it back to zero. And now he's not doing it today. It's not going to take effect today. It's going to take effect on April 1st. So still 2 weeks, 17 days of this carbon tax is going to be happening. I guess we can all just wait to fill up our cars for another 2 weeks. We'll just wait a little while, and then once he has your vote, and once you think that your life is going to be less expensive, because right now we're in the boiling water like the frog. So we've been living at such a high price for so long, even though we started here. What they want to do is bring it to here, and then you'll tell yourself that everything is wonderful. But in the truth of it, that will still be more expensive than anywhere else in the world. It's kind of like the trauma that people go through, and then they get away from it, and even though they're not in good shape, they still think it's better than where they were. There's nothing in it. This is just me saying, I say that the fuel charge should be rolled back to zero, and we'll do that April 1st, and don't worry about it. All of the money that I've collected, I'm still going to mail out to you. You're welcome. And it's like, bud, we would much rather you just destroy the carbon tax altogether, stop your trips to Europe, and let's get down to business. Of course, the first thing he's doing is off to Europe. I'll cover that in a different video. This one I wanted to show you, in this particular segment, I wanted to show you how the theater that's coming out of them already on day one, right? Because he wants you to think that he's Donald Trump, and he is not even in the same group as Donald Trump. Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives are well aware that the Liberal Party is plagiarizing, and that the Liberal Party is up to the same tricks that they've been up to the whole time. I really wanted to show you some of the things that he said, just a little quick clip, so that you can understand exactly how he's going into it with eyes wide open. And that we as Canadians should also be going into it with eyes wide open.
He thinks that a little bit of cosmetic surgery will allow the Liberals to disguise who they are and make people forget what they did for 10 years in order to elect them to a fourth Liberal term. But it's the same Liberal gang with the same Liberal agenda, the same Liberal results, and the same Liberal promises of the last 10 years. Only they want you to be fooled, and they want to take 4 terms. Carbon tax Carney will try later today to pull another fast one. This one's going to be very sneaky, very sneaky. I call it the carbon tax con job. I told you this was going to happen, by the way. Don't say I didn't warn you. He's going to hide the consumer carbon tax for 60 days. And if he's reelected, he'll bring it back bigger than ever with no rebate. Let's be clear. He says that the carbon tax he intends to bring in after the election will be a, quote, shadow carbon tax. And we know that he loves carbon taxes because he publicly advised Trudeau over the last 5 years to raise the taxes even more. But here's what I've got. This is the Liberal carbon tax law. This law cannot be eliminated unless Parliament resumes to vote it down. Mr. Carney could have asked Trudeau to do that months ago. Mr. Carney could have reconvened Parliament today to vote this law down, but he won't. He will keep the carbon tax law in place even while he temporarily hides the carbon tax from the gas pump for 60 days leading up to the election. And after that election, if God forbid he were reelected, there would be a bigger carbon tax than ever before, because Carney would no longer need your vote, but he'd still need your money.
We just saw that trick where he signed that toothless piece of paper that has absolutely no legislative weight whatsoever, and he wants you to believe that he's done something miraculous. In addition, to change the law and make the carbon tax go away from the Canadian population, He stated out loud that he's going to move it on to the businesses. Well, all that means is he has to introduce an amendment to that body of legislation that you saw the Pierre Poilievre hold up. And I just really believe that if you're going to get rid of the carbon tax, you're going to get rid of the whole thing, not just a little bit where you move it over to the companies. Now the companies have to charge us more for all their products, and they become all the more uncompetitive, especially with the behemoth of the United States that they're lining up to. Of course, Mark Carney's first concern is to go off to Europe. I mean, you know, Trump has at least stood around and tried to address the problems of America. We have a looming issue with the 100% tariff on the canola oil with China, and I don't hear the corporate media, the NGO media saying anything about that. I don't hear the Liberal parties talking about how China is doing the exact same thing, only it's 100%. The exact same thing that the Americans are doing, and they're not saying a word. And that's probably because Mark Carney stands to gain a lot of money. There's Brookfield has a history of coming in on people who have been foreclosed on and buying up their property for cheap. Maybe that's what he's hoping will happen in Saskatchewan. I don't know. I'll cover that in another video. This one I wanted to show you. I wanted to point out that Pierre Poilievre is just telling you straight to your face exactly what's happening. I mean, he says one thing and then like an hour later, whatever, Mark Carney goes ahead and does it. Doesn't seem to care. Who are the people that are going to vote for a person who genuinely tells you right to your face that I'm not trying to improve your caliber of life, and to prove that, I'm going to go off to Europe right now instead of worrying about the problems in this country, instead of worrying about the fact that we really haven't had a functioning parliament since May of last year. But that doesn't seem to worry him. That doesn't seem to bother him. He's too busy taking the taxpayer, the Canadian taxpayer, and the Prime Minister's jet and flying all over Europe, where he's shaking hands with far-left politicians, the last two far-left politicians in Europe. The rest of them have tumbled. The rest of them have, it's collapsing down around them. It's so bad that it looks like the EU is going to separate and going to shatter. So I'm not sure that this is the kind of politician that he thinks you and I are looking for. I will show you one other thing now from Donald Trump, because I want to bring home exactly where you need to draw the lines on these kinds of things, and what Mark Carney should already be aware of for Mr. I know Donald Trump really well type of stuff. And EB should all be aware of where the lines are drawn and what to take to what to listen to and what not to listen to.
We don't need their lumber. We have more lumber than they do. We don't need Canada's lumber. So what I'm doing is I'll be signing an executive order freeing up our forests so that we're allowed to take down trees and make a lot of money and then reharvest trees. Also, we're cutting fire divides. A fire divide is a 50-yard to 70-yard swath where the trees can't, it's long enough so trees don't burn forever until you can get them out. And those trees can be sold and made a lot of money with. So, but we'll be doing that. We don't need trees from Canada. We don't need cars from Canada. We don't need energy from Canada. We don't need anything from Canada. So where we can be self-sustaining, which is in most things. Look, we have more oil and gas than anybody. Our forests are massive, massive forests. We're just not allowed to use them because of the environmental lunatics that stopped us. So I'm going to be freeing that up very shortly so that we don't have to go to other countries to buy lumber. Why should we be buying lumber from other countries, paying tariffs, paying big prices, extraordinary prices, and we have lumber. We have the best lumber. Go ahead.
Those of you out there who are trying to nitpick every single word that Donald Trump says will note that this time he didn't say, we have more trees than Canada. He just said we have more oil than anybody, and we have a lot of our own trees. And to those of you that try to nitpick, I'm trying to explain to you right now where you're going wrong and how you're misplacing your energies. Anybody who understands bombastic knows exactly the kind of words that Donald Trump is using. Now, to those of you that don't understand it, like Mark Carney, you'll try to sell that as being erratic and as moving around. But in reality, he's making a claim. Then somebody said to him, wait a minute, that's not true. Canada has more trees. So he won't say it again. He doesn't care because the message in his mind wasn't about the trees. It was about Americans doing it for Americans, which is something that we don't have in the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party thinks that we should be doing it for Ukraine. The Liberal Party thinks we should be doing it for France. The Liberal Party thinks we should be doing it for other people instead of ourselves, right? Not even for ourselves, right? Even if it is domestic, they say, oh, no, we got to be doing it for great grandchildren. You know what? Donald Trump was saying to you that he's doing it for America, and we're going to cut down American trees, and we're going to put American trees into American industry. And if that means that they get low on their trees, then they'll start to buy them somewhere else. But for right now, they don't have to worry about that. They don't have to do that. And Mark Carney, for all his claims that he understands businesses, doesn't seem to understand that. He moved his industry to New York. He moved all of his businesses outside of Canada. He cuts down a lot of trees in Brazil, and puts soya farms in there. That's a different video. I don't want to digress. I do want you to appreciate that what Donald Trump just said here was, we don't need trees from anybody else. He doesn't care if there's more of them or less of them. That doesn't bother him at all. You sitting there going, "Rah, rah, rah, rah." He don't care. Forget about it. I don't care. Whatever. What he's trying to say is we get a lot of trees. And if it's not the more trees in Canada, so what? We still got a lot, and we're going to cut them down, and we're going to use them, and we're going to use them domestically. We're going to give jobs to people domestically. They're going to use that wood domestically. They're going to make they're going to make American furniture. They're going to make American products with that wood, and they're going to sell it in America, and we're going to make a buttload of money. Meanwhile, we're up here saying if you mow the lawn and pull a leaf off of your tree, we're probably going to charge you a carbon tax for that. And it's not going to be long until we decide that, there's too much carbon being produced by lawnmowers. You're all going to have to buy a goat, which of course the goat will poop. So we're going to charge a carbon tax for that. The contrast is really strong. And, if he has more oil or if he doesn't have more oil, he doesn't care. He cares only that the oil, the jobs, the creation. You can say, well, you know what, the whole of New York State is powered by the James Bay project in Canada. Okay, but Google and Meta and Apple have all agreed they're going to build their own nuclear power plants. They're going to build their own. They're going to build their own nuclear power plants, which are much cleaner and much more compact than they used to be. And I have an article where they can put them on the back of an 18-wheeler. So he stalls Doug Ford. And right now, there are 3 projects being built, power plants being built in the 3 states that the Pickering nuclear power plant supplies. All the while, our leadership is running around chasing his tail, flying off to Europe, ignoring the problems with China and doing nothing about the internal problems, not focusing on Canada first, not making Canadians the priority, because they all live in this fantasy world where everybody doesn't care about borders and they don't care about nationality and they don't care about any, but you're wrong. Everybody does. And they're not willing to starve themselves for this carbon crusade that Mark Carney wants to take everybody on. And they're not willing to go pour into the poorhouse and suffer, so that Mark Carney can try to convince himself that he should go to France. Like, I don't know the logic in his move, and it keeps annoying me. But it tells Canadians exactly where his priorities are. Donald Trump, everybody's like, oh no, they're trying to pick on him because some of the things that he says are not necessarily 100% factually accurate, because he doesn't care about the facts. He doesn't care about that stuff. What he cares about is the idea that he's going to make his stuff in his own country by his own people. And they're going to be people that applied to get into the country legally, and everybody's going to make a ton of money, and that's going to make everybody happy. And by the midterms, everybody's going to be voting Republican, because everybody's going to be like, no, don't break it. We want to keep our jobs. We want to know that this factory that's going up right now, that I can have my grandchildren start a job here and they can buy a house 2 streets over. We can't say that in Canada. I mean, we can say that in Canada if the people that are applying to enter Canada or enter the United States fill out the appropriate paperwork, I suppose. And that's, I think, the point that we need to see. One is the smoke and mirrors, and one is, I don't care what you say about me, I'm doing it anyway. One is theater and acting and pretending like he's copying somebody else's moves. And one is, I don't really care what you're saying to me. I don't care that you don't call me on your first day of being president, Prime Minister of Canada. I'm not sending you a phone call. I'm not even sending you a basket of fruit. You are so far off my radar because right now I'm concentrating on which trees I can cut down, and I'm concentrating on how much more oil I can get out of the ground, and I'm concentrating on how many houses I can build, how many jobs I can get, how many schools I can open. That's what I'm worrying about. And Mark Carney and the Liberal Party and the NDP and all of the David Ebe's of the world are running around screaming and going, oh, it's all hysterical, make me a dictator. And Donald Trump doesn't even care what's going on. And we as Canadians need to see that. We need to appreciate that what's going on there, we can duplicate. We can say, you know what, let's put our product for Canadians first. Will we have the massive amount of people that are generating that kind of income? No, but we can start somewhere. We got to get started. If we don't get started, where are we going to end up? All right, I'm going to wrap here. I want to thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.